Hello, in this lesson, we are going to be looking at the topic of writing a conceptualized response. So, in this session, we are going to understand what a conceptualized response is. It mentions it at the top of the mark scheme, and students often ask what it means. So, we're going to be demystifying that and why it's important. We're also going to learn how to craft a conceptualized response that presents a clear argument throughout. And we'll be exploring how to link ideas back to a central thesis and develop a cohesive, high-level essay. So welcome to today's lesson on writing the conceptualized response. A conceptualized response is about more than just answering the question. It's about shaping a sustained argument that drives your essay forward. By the end of today's session, you'll know how to structure a response that goes beyond the basics, weaving your ideas into a coherent, sophisticated argument. So, a conceptualized essay, first of all. A conceptualized response means that your essay is driven by a central argument or idea rather than just summarizing the text or focusing on the theme, thinking what the broader idea or message is behind a theme or a character. Every paragraph must link back to this central thesis, creating a strong, cohesive argument. That means an argument that all glues together nicely. So, an example, a weak response might argue that Macbeth is ambitious and leave it there, while a conceptualized response argues that Shakespeare uses Macbeth's unchecked ambition to explore the corrupting nature of power and its impact on moral integrity. And as a grade 8 or 9 tip, start every essay with a strong thesis statement. That's a bigger idea. We're going to be looking at that more in a second, that you can refer back to throughout the essay. And I don't mean sort of saying, oh, as I mentioned in my thesis statement at the beginning. What I mean is that every idea in your essay connects back to that thesis statement. So you plan your essay out, you have your thesis at the beginning, your big idea at the beginning, and then you think about how you're going to prove that big idea with each of your points. So it's really obvious to the examiner that all of your essay paragraphs link together, all your main body paragraphs link to that main idea, and that you're forming that cohesive argument that links seamlessly together. And think of your thesis as a thread running throughout the entire essay, and it should never get lost. We don't want to be going off on tangents. So a strong thesis statement, as I mentioned before, we will be going over this. So a thesis statement is the main argument or stance you'll take in your essay. So it's kind of that key idea, that central idea that is going to run from your introduction all the way through your essay. And it should be present in your introduction and guide every paragraph. And a good thesis statement is concise, answers the question directly, and shows a clear stance. That's a position on the theme or the character, the topic of the question, or an interpretation of that theme, character, or focus of the question. And as an example, instead of saying in Macbeth, ambition is presented as bad or negative, I mean, that's rubbish and very, very limited. But a lot of students will sort of lead with something like this, a simple statement, maybe not as simple as that, but we want to be trying to say something more advanced, more sophisticated, like Shakespeare's portrayal of Macbeth's ambition is destructive, highlights his belief in the dangers of pursuing power without moral restraint. And as a grade 8 or 9 tip, your thesis should be nuanced. So it should have many sort of facets to it and have subtle aspects of the question that you have identified. And consider using phrases like Shakespeare critiques or Priestley challenges the audience to reconsider. So thinking about the writer's intentions, and that's going to make it nuanced, really thoughtful, and demonstrating to the examiner that you've thought carefully about the question and the bigger ideas behind the text. And this is going to show a more sophisticated understanding of the writer's intentions. And then linking back to your thesis, I mentioned this earlier, but we need to make sure that we always link back to the thesis and that is obvious in every paragraph. So in a conceptualized response, every paragraph must link back to your main argument. Some students will follow a paragraph structure where they'll be taught to link back to the question. And this is definitely worth doing because it's going to help you write that conceptualized response. But as long as your points and your ideas obviously link back and link to your main thesis statement and introduction, then this is going to be easy to demonstrate to the examiner. You don't necessarily have to do a whole sentence linking back to the overall question, but it should be apparent. And as I said, we achieve that through planning. And this ensures that your essay feels cohesive and focused. And avoid writing paragraphs that feel disconnected from your thesis. So as I mentioned earlier, going off on a tangent, we don't want to be doing that. We want to make sure that every paragraph drives that main idea forward. So linking back to your thesis further, if your thesis is that Shakespeare uses Lady Macbeth to explore gender roles, each paragraph should tie back to this idea whether you're discussing her ambition, her guilt, or her relationship with Macbeth. And as a grade 8 or 9 tip, use signposting language to keep your argument clear, such as this reinforces the idea that, this demonstrates Shakespeare's critique of, or this further suggests. So we really want to be making sure that we are reinforcing things throughout our essays as well. And then developing that conceptual thread, as I mentioned earlier. So a conceptualized response has a clear thread running through it, and the essay builds on ideas, creating a logical flow. So every paragraph should not only introduce a new idea, but connect to the previous one, forming a cohesive whole. So what I mean by this is making sure that your ideas flow logically. And an easy way to do this is to organize your paragraphs in chronological order. So you want to be thinking about the beginning of the play, then what happens next. That is often the best way to do it. And when the question says starting with this extract, it doesn't mean you have to literally start with the extract. If the extract is from the end of the play, but it is about ambition, or it is about how Lady Macbeth changes across the play, but the scene is from Act 5, you don't want to start with the given extract. You want to be starting at the beginning of the play, what she is like when we first meet her in Act 1, Scene 5, and then we want to be following that throughout the rest of the play. So making sure that each paragraph can build on the last, and an easy way to do that more often than not is to follow the text chronologically. And then as an example, so in an essay on Macbeth, ambition in Macbeth, you might start by discussing Macbeth's ambition in Act 1, as I just said, and then explore how his ambition grows in Act 2, and finally how it leads to his downfall in Act 5. And the paragraph should flow seamlessly from one to the next. And as a grade 8 or 9 tip, consider how each paragraph builds on the last, and use linking phrases like building on this idea, or this development is mirrored later when. So you want to be making those links across the text, as we've mentioned in other lessons in this series. And then alternate interpretations, again, something that we've mentioned in other lessons in this series, but a conceptualized response often explores multiple interpretations of a text. And this shows a deeper understanding and engages the examiner. When analyzing language or structure, as we've mentioned in other lessons, we must think about structure as well. If we're aiming for those really top level marks, we want to be thinking about the structure of the text and the form, as well as the language devices used by the writer. Consider different ways the audience would interpret the writer's intentions. So as an example, when Macbeth says, "Stars, hide your fires," you could argue that he is trying to hide his ambition. Alternatively, you could suggest that he is rejecting fate or divine intervention, which would have shocked a Jacobean audience. And you can also link this to the great chain of being, the great chain of command, in that the stars are actually above kings. So we can think about the fact that, yes, Macbeth is disrupting the natural order by trying to usurp the throne, by committing regicide, by killing Duncan. But here, interestingly, he is commanding the stars. He's using that imperative, stars, hide your fires. So in this respect, he is overreaching even further because he is trying to control the cosmos, kind of the stars, the galaxy. So he is overreaching even further and disrupting that great chain of being, and going beyond what he is entitled to even further by trying to control the stars. So that's another interpretation that you can add to that. And as a grade 8 or 9 tip, to achieve top marks, always ask yourself, what else could this mean? Consider different perspectives, historical, feminist, Marxist, etc. So we've got lots of other lessons that link to this. And in all of the lessons that we have on the website, which are for each of the texts, we look at different readings and critical interpretations of text when we look at each chapter or scene, lesson by lesson, and we always look at the interpretations, whether that's a feminist perspective, a Marxist perspective, and looking at those critical readings, because that is really going to give you a further insight into analysing the text. So structuring your response, a top grade essay isn't just about individual points, it's about the overall structure. So start with an introduction that outlines your thesis, as we mentioned before, and each paragraph should develop a new idea. Also, we've mentioned before, but I really want to reinforce this because this is something that students often miss, but they must all link back to the central argument. And you want to end with a conclusion that synthesizes your points and leaves readers with a final reflection. So just as an example, and this is not a full response by any stretch of the imagination, but how you might plan it, how you might structure it. So starting off, introduction, this isn't a full introduction either. So Shakespeare's Macbeth explores the corrupting influence of ambition as both Macbeth and Lady Macbeth sacrifice their morality in pursuit of power. That could kind of be our thesis, and then we build a more developed introduction from that. Then body paragraph 1, we might have Macbeth's ambition in Act 1 linked to his moral hesitation. Then our body paragraph 2, Lady Macbeth's ambition and her role in driving Macbeth. And then our body paragraph 3 could be the consequences of unchecked ambition in Act 4 and 5. And remember, we're going to aim for a minimum of 3 paragraphs. So as a baseline, we want 3 paragraphs, but of course you can do more than that. That's to really hit those AO1 marks. And then in our conclusion, we are going to reflect on the broader message about the dangers of unchecked power. And as a grade 8 or 9 tip, use your conclusion to reflect on the writer's overall intention. What was Shakespeare or Priestley, etc., trying to teach their audience? So no matter who it is, whether it's Orwell, whether it's Charles Dickens, we want to be thinking about what they are trying to teach their audience. They are trying to teach something. Every one of the texts has a moral message, and it's up to you to explore that in your essay. And then how is this relevant today? Is it relevant today? Can we think about it through a different lens? So it's worth bearing that in mind as well. So as an example, Shakespeare explores the corrupting influence of ambition as Macbeth descends into moral chaos early on in the play. Shakespeare's use of the metaphor vaulting ambition highlights Macbeth's reckless desire for power. The present participle adjective vaulting not only suggests physical overreach, but also mirrors Macbeth's moral overreach. So you can see there that I'm adding an alternate interpretation, as his ambition leads him to commit increasingly heinous acts, so increasingly terrible acts. This imagery encapsulates or captures Shakespeare's broader message that unchecked ambition corrupts even the noblest of characters. Moreover, the fact that Macbeth acknowledges that his ambition is dangerous, yet continues to pursue it, reflects the play's exploration of free will versus fate, a theme that would have resonated strongly with the Jacobean audience. So you can see I'm hitting all of the assessment objectives and linking to that overall concept that I would have outlined in an introduction, and always include context and the writer's intentions in your analysis, just as a grade 8 or grade 9 tip there. I know you know it, but this is something, again, that students often miss. Constantly refer back to what you believe the writer's intentions were. And for top marks, go beyond the surface and consider how the text's ideas relate to its historical or social context. So not just kind of like biographical context, but the historical and social context and the key ideas. So not just kind of what you knew was happening at the time, but the key ideas explored in the text, in that quotation you've selected, link those specifically to the historical and social context. Some common pitfalls now. So descriptive writing, we don't want to just summarize the plot or retell the story. I know you know this, but you'd be surprised how many students do this. So this is not something we want to see in a conceptualized response. Disconnected points, I know I've labored this, but every paragraph, each and every paragraph should be linked to the thesis and to the paragraphs before and after it. And we don't want a vague thesis statement. Your argument must be specific, clear, and sustained throughout your essay. And in my opinion, the only way that this can be achieved is through planning. And as a grade 8 or 9 tip, before you write, plan your essay. Ensure every point you make contributes to your argument. And this is going to help avoid going off on tangents or losing focus, and making sure that we remain focused on the command word of the question. And don't be afraid to repeat those command words of the question. And then final thoughts, a conceptualized response is about depth and cohesion, so all linking together as well as clarity. Always refer back to your thesis, explore alternate interpretations or alternative interpretations, and link each paragraph logically. As I said, we can do this in chronological order. And remember, it's not just about answering the question, it's about shaping a clear and sustained argument, thinking about what writers are trying to achieve. And have a go yourself, try it yourself. Write a conceptualized paragraph on the theme of guilt in Macbeth, focusing on how it drives the character's actions. Ensure that each point links back to the central argument if you're going to do the whole essay. But you can just practice writing one conceptualized paragraph, thinking about the function of guilt in the text. You can even write your conceptualized introduction and then just have a go at planning out some points that would follow through in terms of conceptualized essay, applying the skills that we have learned in this lesson. So that brings us to the end of this lesson. If you have found it useful, and make sure you check out the other free sessions that we have put together for you, as well as the accompanying resources. Also, do check out the website and don't forget to follow us on social media.